Welcome back to the Artie Lange Show. I'm sitting here with Nic Harcourt from Guitar Center Sessions. Fits in the Tantrum and Alabama Shakes, the two bands you said that are newer bands. That
you should check them out.
Like now, when you say they're successful newer bands or bands, like what kind of venues do they play on a regular basis? What kind of a living do they make? As guitar, bands now.
I think when you, well, interestingly enough, I don't think there's a guitar player in Fits in the Tantrums.
Oh, okay.
But I think a lot of these bands can play reasonable size venues, and that's, I mean,
meaning like 5,000 people, or like
Alabama Shakes. The girl Brittany, I forget her last name, was on the Grammys last year, and they got a huge bump out of that.
Right.
And it'll be interesting to see what they come back with their second album. But Fits in the Tantrums, I mean, they come in LA, they play probably 3,000, 4,000 seat venues, something like
so
that.
They can make a good living at it.
Yeah, they can do okay. I mean, and the thing is, bands don't make money from selling records anymore.
They got to tour.
Music's free.
Yeah, they got to tour. Exactly.
It is. It's just,
they it's funny. You say they went to the Grammys or whatever. They got nominated. They got a big hit over that. The bands were so much bigger back in the day. No cool band went to the Grammys. Remember, like that was like the Carpenters and stuff. Like the Stones were never at the Grammys.
Yeah,
and they didn't need to. They actually got a bigger following from not going. It was more rock and roll, not to go to an award show.
I'm not a fan of the Grammys myself. I think it's a popularity contest.
Pretty much,
doesn't
right?
really mean anything.
And now it's so fragmented with the Video Music Awards and what's
sure.
the bigger deal?
American Music Awards,
and they all
the
go.
YouTube Awards, and
even the rebellious. That's my point. I hate that about the so-called rebels of the music business nowadays. They all go to the award show. I know it's a business and they have to go, but they all even movie stars nowadays. Could you imagine Paul Newman going to the Kids' Choice Awards and getting slimed? Paul Newman getting slimed?
Well,
but Tom Cruise does because you got to whore it up. You have to.
You also have to think it's interesting, and you'll get a kick out of this. I think I sat down with my girl last night and we watched a movie with Gene Kelly and Judy Garland called Summer Stock.
Okay.
And which I would thoroughly recommend to anybody. And we were watching these people and we were like, those were stars.
Right.
Those people were stars. You think of somebody like Judy Garland, that's a star.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You think of people like Sinatra. I mean, those people were stars. If you look at what we sort of have today that sort of pose as stars, there's nobody really with any, sort of essence, I think. You think about Paul Newman. I mean,
that was a movie star.
That's a legend.
I know.
Yeah.
And he's not. I don't care what agent he has. He's not going to get talked into getting slimed with green juice at the Kids' Choice Awards.
No, you should do this. It'll be good for your career.
Robert Redford, Steve McQueen getting slimed. I just don't see it.
Yeah.
Or
you and I would do it on the other hand.
Listen, I gotta make a living. But you're right. I think it's unfair to give a lot of crap to these newer stars because they have to. In fairness, a lot of them have to. Although I think some of them, if they took a little bit of a rebellious stand, might get rewarded for that. But a lot of them have to. They have no choice,
You don't have to, really.
Yeah.
It just depends on how badly you want to play the game.
Right.
Right? I mean, there are plenty of people out there who don't do that, don't make those choices. And then there are people who are like, well, yeah, you should do it for your career. And, their managers are saying, yeah, but there's nobody else who's taking any notice. Go on that kids program and get slimed. Okay. Sure.
No, I know. It's true. You got to have balls enough to say no to stuff, I guess. What about there's the Beatles and then there's other bands. Like who else on your list of favorite bands would you put? Even besides the Stones and the Who, like who's up there?
Well, I'm going to say some bands that you might not necessarily agree with.
That's why I'd love to hear, yeah.
I think even though they're probably past their peak now, Radiohead are probably one of the most important bands of the last 20 years.
Yeah.
I think Björk is a really important artist, and
what has she done lately? Has she done anything lately?
She does some crazy stuff, man. I actually went and saw something that she did a couple of months ago in LA, and regardless of how much I respect her, and I'm glad that she's out there doing her crazy stuff, I had to leave. It was
too self-indulgent.
It was too much, But I love that people are out there doing that, because they challenge us, and and we need that, because if we just accept the stuff that is spoon-fed to us. Then we're all just going to turn into just blobs.
No, I think you're right. You're right about Bjork. I think she had the opportunity to sell out a while ago, and she took the other course.
Absolutely,
she
absolutely.
Did, yeah.
And there's a band from my sort of punk days in England called the Gang of Four, who I will always love and respect, and actually have a tattoo on my arm here that says, "To hell with poverty."
Were you that's a good one.
Yeah.
Were you a punk guy? Is that how you started out?
Not really. I actually, sort of came through glam. Glam was really where I sort of found my
Which is like the New York Dolls you're talking about?
Yeah,
and stuff
the
like
New
that?
York Dolls obviously sort of started in the States, and then when it went over to England, it was people like T-Rex and Bowie and a few other people, Sweet and stuff like that. And that kind of blew my mind as a 14-year-old kid, seeing guys in makeup and high heels and satin. It just kind of, I don't know, it just blew my mind. So that expanded stuff for me. And then, you just sort of take the trip, it's like through prog rock and stuff like that. And when punk actually came along, I was about 19 or 20, and I didn't get it at first. I really didn't.
Meaning who? Like the Ramones and stuff like that?
Well, the Ramones,
Sex Pistols?
I didn't hear the Ramones until later because I was in England. But the Sex Pistols and that stuff and all the crazy crap that was around that. But then I heard the Clash, and I was like, okay, now I get it. So yeah.
I have a trouble even calling them, like pigeonholing them to a punk band. They were more like just, because I saw them open for the Who.
Yeah.
At Shea Stadium in the 9th grade. It was on the first day, and that was like David Johansen from New York Dolls was solo at the time. It was him, and then the Clash, and then the Who, and you're just not going to see a concert like that anymore.
Forget it, right? Yeah, the Clash were just unbelievable, and I had the opportunity to interview Joe Strummer about a year or so before he passed away, which is quite a while ago.
Great,
I think he might have died.
He's been dead 10 years.
I think it is 10 years. It might have been the year before, and
I think 2002. I think.
And I have to tell you, the funniest thing about that was that the thing that he was most pissed off about was the fact that he couldn't smoke in the building. And I was like, wow. All that crazy sort of punk attitude sort of distilled down to, you won't let me smoke in here?
That's how it starts.
Yeah.
Remember the letter that they wanted to put the Sex Pistols in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? And no matter what you think of them, you got to admire Johnny Rotten wrote some letter to like Clive Owen and everybody at the committee for the Rock. Like, take your $2,500 a plate dinner and shove it up here. Did you remember that letter? And Clive Owen read it.
Clive Davis, you're probably thinking of, right?
Clive Owen.
He's an actor.
Great if Clive Owen read it.
He's an actor. Yeah.
No, Clive Davis actually read it. To his credit, he read it out loud.
Yeah.
Do you remember the one I'm talking about?
I got to be honest with you, I don't. The funny thing about the Sex Pistols is that, the thing about the Sex Pistols, and again, it's like, everyone's got their price. Everyone's got their, their buyout place. And when they were broke, they got back together and did it. And they even called it the Filthy Lucre Tour, which I think is, ironic, obviously, but, it's just funny. Everyone's got their moment where I guess they'll do stuff. I mean, I got mine.
Me too. It's all right when people in show business do. When politicians have it, that's the problem.
That's the problem. But they're cheap.
Yeah, they're way low.
You can get those guys real cheap.
They're way low. But you play in a band, John. I mean, you always keep that quiet. He's actually a real talented guitar player, John.
No. Well, we're defunct, my band. Our bassist plays in the Very Americans now, so he
got a better opportunity.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. I was never the one who wanted to play out. And I felt obligated to go play because Garrett and Chris, the drummer, they wanted to go out and play so badly. And
you mean live gigs?
Yeah, they wanted to go out and play, and I
Why didn't you want to play?
I don't know.
No, let's just play in the garage.
It doesn't make any sense.
Don't really want to see me.
I love to play.
The album sales were enough for you?
No, I love to play, but I would just as soon just play by myself or play with those guys in the basement or something.
That's a true rebel.
I just feel like it was too much of a pain in the ass to go and drag all my stuff out to a bar and
wow,
and
it is a
that.
pain in the ass.
And
it's like skiing or
listen.
bowling.
I was the one who was singing it and playing it. Like I felt more pressure to do well. Like if I could have just sat in the back and played some drums, that seems like it'd be easier.
Well, Nick, I'm sure you were wondering about this. What happened to his band? And
yeah.
So you just didn't want to be up front.
Maybe that was it.
Yeah.
Maybe that was it.
And he's good enough to be.
I didn't like that.
Do you feel robbed? Well, there's a lot of things that we got robbed of when Lennon was killed, but do you think him and McCartney would have gotten back together? Do you think they would have ever had a price to come back together and tour?
Who knows? I mean, I don't know if it would have been a price thing with those guys. It probably would have been
just to do it,
a healing thing, because they obviously, from what I understand, towards the end of Lennon's life, was starting to sort of, talk again. But I mean, you know, the Beatles were offered a lot of money, you know, within a year or two of Lennon passing, and they turned it down. I mean, I think they were offered, you know, I mean, I could be making this up.
Those three guys?
I think they were offered like $1 million, you know, like within a year or two of Lennon's passing to do a one-off, and they were just like, nah.
How can you do it without Lennon, though? You know,
you can't do it without Lennon, obviously. I mean, but I think before he died, they were offered.
Oh, you mean before?
Yeah,
I thought you meant after.
No, they were offered a ridiculous amount of money for.
See, he was still too young. Maybe I think as he got older, maybe he would have loosened up a little bit. That's what I mean. He was only 40 years old.
You know, the funny thing is, though, it's like, you know, I mean, when these people pass like that, they're frozen in time, obviously, and anything that we think about is just all guesswork and supposition. And, you know, I like to think that, you know, he stopped when he was supposed to stop. I mean, I'm sorry he died, don't get me wrong, but from what he was supposed to do creatively, it stopped when it was supposed to stop. And you never know, some of these guys, they go on, and even though they're great, you know, 10, 15, 20 years later, you know, and it would have been horrible to see something bad.
You got to capture lightning in a bottle, I think. There's a small window of where you could be a really cool rock star.
There are plenty of these artists, that, as we know, that have gone on and they still can go and sell out, you know, stadiums because the baby boomers have got nothing else they want to drop their $200 on.
I'll keep going to see Springsteen because I'm a kid from Jersey who was 16.
The thing about Springsteen, though, is that, you know, and I didn't grow up listening to him. I've sort of come to respect him since I lived in the States, but he's still vital.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, and he still writes important songs.
To his credit, he at least tries. He's one of the few guys who really tries to write a full album that's means something.
As opposed to Dylan, who's just, you know, been calling it in for.
Who should have done?
Ever.
Who should have done? Is Dylan a guy who should have done?
No. You can't take me down that road. That's okay. So
who should have stopped?
We'll scratch him off my interview list, future interview list.
When do you think Dylan sort of jumped the shark, for lack of a better term?
It's been, I don't know. It's been a while.
It's been a long time since he's had a song that you could recognize, even, you know.
Well, it's been a while, and then no disrespect to him, obviously. I mean, you know, he is a legend, but there are these guys who just keep going on and going on and going on. Yeah. And you know, we were talking about Bowie earlier on.
Yeah.
And the thing that
you got to actually sit down with the guy.
I interviewed him a little before he sort of retired, I guess, because he retired. He didn't tell anybody he retired. He just stopped. Stopped 10 years ago. And the thing that I love about him is that I think he realized that he had nothing to say. So he stopped. And then he came back this year with what I think is one of the best records of the year.
No kidding. And I haven't even heard. I got to check that out,
unapologetically just put the record out, didn't do any interviews, didn't do any press, did nothing.
So he waited until he had something to say, you think, and then it wasn't about the press, it was about just putting it out.
Said it with the music, you know?
That's interesting.
And there were people in the industry who say, yeah, but he should have done it this way, and he should have planned this promotional thing. And it's like, he doesn't care.
He doesn't,
You know, it's like he's David Bowie. It's like, I'm just putting out a record.
Exactly. No, and to his credit, he didn't sell out officially with it, but I don't know. I'd like to see all these guys still perform as long as they can, but I respect Bowie's decision. We've got to take a break. Back after this.
The Artie Lange Show, weeknights on Audience, only on DirecTV.